Hello and welcome to Carnivore Wellness. My name is Rebecca and today I'm going to talk about hormones. This is one of my favorite topics because for me, this is an area that I have not understood for way too long. And it wasn't until I started taking back ownership of my health and well-being that I really started to lean into and understand my own hormonal cycle and how that affects me and my body as I move through the 28-day cycle each and every month. One resource that I have found to be incredibly helpful is the website hormonology.com. And I found this back when I was in college, and I thought it was mind-blowing that there was this explanation for why I felt differently at different times during the month. So let's kind of go through that and break that down. At the beginning of our monthly cycle, which is noted as the first day that you are menstruating and need to use feminine hygiene products, your three main sex hormones, estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone, they're at their lowest level at this point. So in the first 2 weeks, basically from the start of your cycle to ovulation, that is a time where your estrogen is increasing, and along with it, as you get closer and closer to the actual time of your ovulation, around the 14-day mark, you see an increase in testosterone and progesterone as well. So that beautiful combination of hormones building at that 2-week mark around ovulation is what brings you to probably the best time of your entire cycle. And then, of course, you have the second phase of your cycle, days 14 to 28, where your hormones are shifting in the luteal phase, so your body is responding to either a fertilized egg or a non-fertilized egg. For most of us, most months, it is a non-fertilized egg, and our body responds accordingly with an increase in progesterone and a decrease in the estrogen. And the first few days of being on your period or menstruating, you may still feel a little fatigued, a little tired, maybe a little achy, depending on how your body responds to your menstrual cycle. But this is a time where your body is slowly starting to build back up those hormone levels. Now that I'm on a carnivore diet, I have a really nice, smooth, pretty seamless cycle. I do notice during this time that my appetite decreases, especially as it relates to diet, exercise, or even something that requires overcoming some fear. I am best off starting that new thing within the first 3 to 5 days of the start of my cycle. So pretty much as soon as my period is done and I'm done menstruating, I'm ready to take on a new challenge. For me, this, day 4 or 5 to about day 14, I am on fire with whatever it is that I want to do. So this previous month, I have decided to cut out dairy that I've been leaning on way too heavily, and to cut out snacking because I really want to get back to just eating these quality meals that then fuel me and carry me into the next mealtime. I've also given up decaf coffee. So I dropped the coffee and the dairy and the snacking around that day 4, day 5 mark of the start of my cycle this previous month. During this 2-week time leading up to ovulation, my appetite is lower. So if I am going to see any kind of slim down, I generally see it most noticeably in this first 2-week period of time. And then comes ovulation. That is the time when you have, the most confidence, you're feeling the most social. You are able to learn a new skill much easier than you can at other times. You have a higher pain tolerance. You're a little bit stronger, you can do a little more work in the gym and see those results, especially if you're doing some kind of resistance training. That would be the time to try for your personal record on certain movements or weight levels that you're working for. And it's recognizable. I feel good. My libido is always really high during this time. It's a time when I am up for going out and being social. So after ovulation, this 14-day mark, that is when your estrogen starts to drop and your progesterone, which is the calming hormone, starts to increase. Now, usually after ovulation, it is kind of a quick shift for me, I notice. I go from feeling on fire, on top of the world, full of energy and ready to take the bull by the horns, to needing to go inward and to needing to find a calm, centered space for myself. Often I'll have a day or two where I might need to go lay down and take a nap for a bit in the afternoon, or at least have a settled quiet time. And I also notice this is when my hunger comes back. Now, back before I was tracking my hormones and knowing where I was in my cycle, I could never understand why all of a sudden I would get so hungry out of nowhere. Well, now I'm able to see it is a direct correlation to my hormones and what my body is trying to do. So, your body is basically, on the off chance that your egg did get fertilized, it wants to make sure that you are eating enough food to nourish two bodies, your body and the potentially growing baby. So usually after ovulation, I just know this is not the time for me to try and reduce my meal size. This is the time to have a high fat meal and make sure that I am getting plenty of fats, healthy animal fats, to give my body the building blocks it needs for my hormonal development over the next couple of weeks. Our hormones come from cholesterol. That cholesterol is the backbone of each and every hormonal structure in our body. So it is vitally important that we get enough fat in our diet. And so when I have this increased hunger, I mostly increase my meal size by increasing the fats. This is a time where previously when I incorporated dairy, this is when I would go bring in my, higher dairy meals. But as I move forward and I'm trying to step away from the dairy, I will add more butter. Now, yes, technically butter is dairy, but I don't respond to it negatively. Some folks do, and maybe perhaps they could use ghee instead, or just tallow. I will often increase the amount of tallow that I put on my food, the butter I put on my food. I'm going to go for the fattiest cut of ribeye I can find. I might even take some of the pieces of beef fat that I have in the freezer and fry those up just to eat the fat by itself. This is the time where I lean into nourishing my body with healthy fats. So at the end of your week 3, you start to see a dip in your estrogen. And so you'll start to feel, even a little tired, perhaps a little cranky and irritable, depending on your balance of hormones. Give yourself grace during this time. This is not necessarily the time to go out and be a go-getter and put yourself, in a very social setting. Maybe stay home and watch a movie, snuggle up with your significant other if you have one. This is a time for closeness and connection and kind of a quiet centering, and just lean into that if you have that luxury of being able to schedule your time as such. And then by the 4th week, your estrogen is starting to rise again. And, it'll rise about 5 or 6 days before the start of your next period or the start of your next cycle. So you'll see an increase in your estrogen. A lot of times this can help you feel pretty good, leading up to the start of your period. And then that will start to decrease again. And as that drops to its low level, that lowest level of your estrogen at the end of the week, that corresponds with your day 28 and will kind of trigger the start of your menstrual flow. So that kind of takes you through the month. In short, the first 2 weeks are your go-get-'em weeks. Those are the weeks when your estrogen is building, you're starting to feel really good. As you get close to ovulation, your testosterone level is coming up and really giving you a lot of empowering feelings. And then you have your ovulation. That is this beautiful window of you having the most superpowers that is possible for you for that month. This is also the time when you can get pregnant. So make sure that you act in accordance to what your wishes are as far as pregnancy goes. And then following that time, that is when your body is building progesterone. And I do think that a lot of women can struggle during this time of trying to build progesterone, because if you do not have enough animal fat in your body for your body to then use to make the hormones that it needs, that is when you start to see a lot of issues with PMS symptoms, the moodiness, crankiness, fatigue, irritability, brain fog. So the best thing we can do during that time is to just be as supportive of our hormones as we can, give our bodies the fat that it needs, and leaning into a carnivore diet. That's one of the best ways to regulate your hormones, I firmly believe, and have experienced, personally. I want to speak a little bit about my experience going through my hormonal cycle back when I was really struggling with postpartum anxiety and depression. When I was menstruating, I would menstruate from, day 1 of my cycle to about day 4, maybe into day 5. And during that time, I was low energy. I was really just kind of withdrawn and a little achy, sometimes. That's when I would have some cramping and just not feel good. And I would really kind of just stick to myself for about 4 or 5 days. So then that takes us to about day 5 or 6 up through ovulation. Now, normally, as we've discussed before, you would start feeling good and the estrogen starts rising and you feel, pretty positive about life. I would have about 1 week of that time frame where I would feel pretty good. And I would think to myself each and every month, I think I'm finally coming out of this anxiety and depression that has been so crippling for so long. But without fail, each and every month, a few days before ovulation, so about day 12, maybe 11, 12, 13, I would notice an increase in irritation and mood swings, and I'd be tired and cranky. And honestly, this is when I would say the rage monster came out. So I used to really struggle with, a sign of depression that I didn't even realize at the time was a sign of depression was rage. This all of a sudden jump to intense irritability, irritation, anger. And I just knew to call it nothing other than rage, because that's what it felt like. And when you're a mom to 2 young kids and you're trying to keep your cool and teach them how to be good humans, showing what rage looks like and having that be your lived experience is not ideal. And then I would ovulate, but I didn't really feel good, during that ovulation time. Again, my only time of feeling good was about day 5 or so of my cycle to about day 11. Following ovulation, I immediately switched into what I would call 2 weeks of depression. There was no other way to put it. That is what it felt like. That was the time when, my estrogen plummeted and my progesterone was rising. And progesterone is very good in sedating. But again, your hormones need to all work in concert with one another to be at the right level. It's not about having, the estrogen at this level and the progesterone at this level. It's about how they work together and kind of counteract and balance one another out. And I just did not have that. I wasn't eating a diet that supported that. At that time, I was eating so much sugar because that was one of my quick grab vices to, give me a little pep, pick me up. And I was leaning on alcohol nearly daily. I was smoking a lot of weed, which probably only contributed to the sugar binges. And I wasn't getting sleep. I was starting every day with about 3 to 4 cups of coffee. A big storm of hormonal disaster. I was not giving my body what it needed. At the time, I was just doing the best I could to survive each and every day because motherhood was so brutal for me in the fact that my hormones were so out of balance and I did not feel good, did not feel grounded or calm or self-assured. And that really robbed me of the peace and the joy that can come with being a mom to 2 wonderful kids. I was just full of depression. I felt so terrible. I had very little hope that I would ever feel good again. These days were met by, with me waking up and crying or waking up in a rage-like mood. This was when the rage monster was at her finest. She was boss. So I'd wake up and I was just angry, despite the fact that I had a beautiful little child that I could sit there and nurse and snuggle and that he would coo at me, or my other little child, my little girl was, playing so sweetly or being so kind. I missed out on the goodness of those moments because my mind and body was just overtaken by this rage feeling, this irritation, this moodiness, and this lack of control and this lack of sense of calm. And I existed in this space for 2 weeks. And then, by my day 28, back to cycle day 1, where I would, start menstruating again, I'd just go into a little lull. But at least I knew with the start of my period that relief was coming. And so without fail, that relief would come for about days 5 through 12, right before I ovulated again, and went on yet another month-long, 2.5 week roller coaster of not feeling good. I'm here to share my story because there is a better way, and there's a way through that anxiety and through that depression, and it comes in large part to getting your hormones back into balance with one another, and that comes from getting enough fat and lowering the sugar intake. If you are still eating a standard American diet or even a low-carb diet where you're including some sugars, that could be an area where you consider making some changes so that your insulin levels can come down and your blood sugar is not raging out of control and giving you those, roller coaster ups and downs, mood swings, brain fog. So when I look back on that time, it is such a shame that only one fourth of my lived existence was spent feeling good. And the other 3/4 of my experience was largely negative. And it is because my hormones were out of balance. And that is one of the main reasons that I feel it is, necessary to share my story. There is probably someone out there right now who is struggling with their hormones and they have no clue what they can do to fix it. And I know they have no clue because I was on Google day and night looking up hormones, trying to figure out what is going on in my body. And there's simply not enough digestible information out there for people who are struggling and needing to get back on track to get the right information. And really the only thing that started to turn the tides for me was following a ketogenic diet. That is when I started seeing great benefit to my mental health, and I know my hormones were getting better, but it did not really click over and switch into a place of good hormonal balance until I started a carnivore diet. Our bodies, especially our hormonal cycles, they go through a 3-month cycle. So just because you start doing something and you're not seeing results within 1 month or 2 months doesn't mean it's not working. Give it a full 3 months. And even then, it might take yet another 3 months to kind of take you to the next level, and then another 3 months to get you to the next level. Once I started the carnivore diet, it took about 5.5 months for me to reach a point where in that monthly cycle, rather than feeling that tension during the last 2 weeks of my cycle while the progesterone's building, I finally felt this overarching sense of calm, which was very fresh and new. I may feel a little more fatigued, or just a little more subdued, I guess is a better word, but I know it's based on my hormones. It's just simply a different phase of my cycle, and knowing the different phases of my cycle and matching up my lived experiences, what I'm feeling, even my behaviors, and seeing how those correlate to where I am in my cycle has been so empowering for me. There was such a long period of time where I did not understand my own body. I did not understand my hormones. Now I'm at a place where with the carnivore diet, my hormones are in balance. I feel good. I feel confident. I feel calm. At times of the month, like when I'm leading up to ovulation, I feel pretty unstoppable, and that's a good feeling and a good time to harness that energy and put it towards the greater good. So I know I'll be going into the next 2 weeks and it'll be a bit more of a subdued time, and I welcome that time. That gives me time to do some inner work, some personal reflection. It gives me time to, make sure that I'm carving out time to connect with my husband and to be extra snuggly with my kids. And to just know that that is what's ahead for me for the next couple of weeks gives me a sense of peace because I know what to expect. I'm not on this roller coaster anymore. I got off the roller coaster when I got on board with eating a meat-based, animal-based diet that is supportive to building and sustaining and nurturing my hormonal balance. What kind of insights do you have about your own hormonal balance? Have you done a deep dive into your hormones, how they play out, how they work for you throughout your cycle? Are you still just kind of going along, waiting to see what comes with each and every day? I know that's where I have been. Many people don't have, such a wide variance of symptoms throughout the month. They kind of stay even keeled. Maybe that's you. I'm so curious to know what your journey looks like and how your hormones play into that. If you would, comment down below, or you can reach out to me on Instagram at Carnivore Wellness. I also have a blog at www.carnivorewellness.com. To have our hormones work with us instead of against us is a true blessing and superpower in and of itself. So I just wanted to share some of that with you today. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for giving of your time. Again, like and subscribe if you want to make sure you don't miss any content like this. I'm sure this will not be the last time I talk about hormones because it is one of my favorite topics and an area that I think needs more attention. So it's been a great chatting with you. Again, my name is Rebecca. This is Carnivore Wellness. I'm so thankful for your time today. Have a wonderful day and make sure you eat those healthy animal fats to support your hormonal well-being.